per
little bit of a sneak
level
peek in
per
the
level up
flash
of the
test, if you participated there. But
That's
we
huge.
wanted to sit down and talk with you all, kind of give you all the big picture and kind of what the scope of what we're doing is. But before we hop into it, we do see you all in chat saying there may be an issue with Xbox and not being able to log in. We just messaged Kabir over on the Titan Forge team. They're going to be looking into that.
Yep.
And sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it. That's it. That's all I was gonna say.
And I think that
it was the
pretty much
active
it.
Phoenix
I think the
feather.
only
Think
other
about
thing
it
is, I
as like
believe we did
a
have
old
a nerf
bracer.
for Yamoja's aspect go live
Yes.
yesterday, correct?
Yes, I know Clumsy was able to get that in. I don't remember exactly what the details of it were, but he had pretty high confidence this was going to address the main frustration points of it.
Cool. Yeah, I believe what we did is we reduced the damage on subsequent bounces.
Yes.
So if you, that first hit is always going to be 100%, but the subsequent bounces, that damage did get decreased.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, shall we get into the nitty gritty because we do
Yes.
have
I
a
should have
big
gotten snacks.
topic to go over. Pon, I'm gonna defer to you. Tell us. We're gonna start off with items today, chat, just because that's where the bulk of the changes are gonna be in this update. And this is gonna be the first update in kind of a multi-patch
Yes.
arc of
Yes.
item changes that
Yes.
we're doing. So, Pon, get us into it.
Yeah, so to take it from the top, OB7 is going to be kind of about us addressing the overall item, the power of items as a whole, as a concept, right? We want to make sure that we have a very solid baseline because in OB8, we're going to start specializing items a lot more aggressively. So things that are supposed to be meant for tank shredding will be really, really, really good at that, but they'll have less base stats to compensate, or they'll have other trade-offs. There'll still be items that are
Chad, do
meant
you guys
for like the early game buys. That are meant to be pretty
Remember
good,
when I
solid,
used to say
items that
items
just
are
can't pick up 'cause
bloated
they're
from a
good?
base
But
stat?
when you want the
Like you can
specialization
buy
items,
an
you wanna
item
make
and
sure
it's
that
just
those are
so
really
good
clear,
for
like,
base
you have to
stats.
be really
It has
diligent to place
everything
out
you
a
want. You don't have to
counter
sacrifice
measure
anything
thing.
by buying
And if we
something
don't
else.
do
This is what that
OB7 kind of
addresses.
reset that we're gonna
Bring
discuss,
everything back down
it's
to
gonna
a good
create some bounce
base.
problems that we're going to have with trying to do that. And then OB9 is largely
And
for
then
any,
buff the parts of
feedback
the
that we get over the process of this. We
items
wanna make
that
sure
you
we have a
want
patch
to
dedicated
flourish
to
for that
addressing any
item. You
concerns
can't
that
just get
pop up,
everything you need from the
addressing
item.
anything that we might miss in this pass. One that we are being cognizant of but we might miss is, for example, let's say chin size becomes a very tank-focused anti-tank item, right? Well, now on-hit builds are missing a core piece of
They've
their
always
on-hit
had
build.
power,
And so
and
we
then the
wanna make sure
passive
that
was
there's an
always
item there to
the
actually
the
represent
pen.
that. So that's what like OB9, OB8 will.
You haven't
will
missed
be
anything,
tailoring
no.
towards. But to get into like the details of what OB7 is, because that's our first pass,
Yes,
is
yes.
we're essentially going to nerf every item by about 10 to 12%, which if every item gets nerfed this way, not that much changes in regards to the relationship of power level of item A to item B, but it does address a core balancing problem that we currently have right now. And to illustrate that, I had this in the dev notes, so I definitely say go read the dev notes as well, so you can kind of like follow through once you have dev notes out. But if you think about like Smite characters, they have their base level power and they have their item level power, right? And if characters are all base strength, it's just their base stats, their abilities, and the base damage they do, and items don't really contribute anything to that. Well, characters are really defined by like whatever their kit says they can do. There's not much room for expression. There's not much room for trying to counter certain strategies, to try and push your character to do something that they might not baseline be necessarily that good at, right? There's reasons why MOBAs have items.
Yeah.
It's for that flexibility.
Yeah.
But if you go to the other side of the spectrum where items are, let's say they 10x what your base character can do, right? This is obviously the extreme, but just to illustrate the point, well, now your base character doesn't really contribute meaningfully to how the character is supposed to play, and it also creates weird balance problems. And the main one I want to focus on for this one is, imagine a carry versus a carry scenario. Actually, a carry versus tank scenario, right? A tank is 10x tankier because they built tank items. The carry needs to be able to actually kill that tank. So they build a whole bunch of things to kill tanks. The items for these to be able to do that have to be very, very, very powerful. And the second a carry sees another carry, the act of looking at them immediately causes both of them to explode. Yeah. Right? And that's a very difficult problem to solve. It's why, like, for example, if we were to try and resolve that by saying, well, we're going to increase pen over here, we're going to lower a whole bunch of base stats, you don't really address it, and you very quickly create tank metas. Or it's one of those things where like you try to address one part of the curve, and it addresses the whole game in a way that is really hard to balance.
Yeah.
So the goal,
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say we were in a situation where it's like we could keep trying to band-aid a solution, or we could go back, we could fix what we saw as the core underlying problem, and then move forward from there.
Yes. And so Smite 2 also has a unique problem set where we have a 7th item slot entirely, right? We moved starters over to a 7th item slot, so now you can actually build 6 items. So the amount of just item power from that alone was really high. And when we first started Smite 2, we had kind of a power budget in mind, but that power budget has crept up over time due to really fast balancing passes, just trying to make sure that things felt like they were interesting and engaging.
In case people are
even just
concerned,
things like we
understand
don't necessarily
something.
know at the start of Smite 2,
They are
we know
nerfing
how
every
impactful
item by the
active
same
would be.
percentage.
How
If
much
every
power
item has
budget
been
should
nerfed
you
by the
budget
same
for an item that has
percentage, it
90-second cooldown?
technically isn't a
Over the
nerf
balancing
to any
passes have a lot
specific
better
items
idea
built
of
by
that.
any
And so
specific
now the goal
characters.
here is to kind of reset that baseline. We are still actually higher.
This doesn't affect
basically
many
the adjustment we
characters in
made.
their
We're still
relation
actually
to how
higher
you
per item
interact
power
with
than we
other
started Smite
characters,
2 at.
because there's
So
not
this
a
isn't like
single
super
set of items
crazy
that's being nerfed.
reduction,
It's
but it's enough of a
everything.
reduction that
base stats.
we feel like it's going to set our baseline up well for the OB8 and OB9 going forward.
Cool.
And
All
so,
well,
just
I'm going to bring up the laptop
Yes.
because we've got a quick TLDR for you to
Yes.
read. So, TLDR Open Beta 7 focuses on resetting the baseline power level.
You guys
items.
remember
So
when we
this
used
is
to talk
that
about like
10 to
Screeching
12%
Gargoyle, and I was like,
kind
the
of
reason
lowering
that
of
it's good
stats
is
on
not
items.
specifically
For
because the
OB8, we're gonna concentrate
the
on
active
enhancing
is so
item
good. The active is good,
specialization,
but it
making
also
the
has
unique
like
effects more
60
impactful.
protections
the
and
side effect
20
of that would be
cooldown. You should
making
be
building more interesting
sacrificing
because you are making
base
decisions
stats
based on what you see
by
because
going
things
this
have
really
stats
strong
for
active.
purposes.
Yes.
But
Not
every
just,
item
I build
feels
things
like
with
it
this
just
stuff.
has
Yes.
too
And
many
then for
bloated
OB9
base stats. It
and
has
any
everything
balanced
you need. It
hotfixes
has.
leading
You go to a
into
carry item,
OB9,
you can find
we're gonna be
attack speed
dedicating,
and pen
our
and
time
life
to tying
steal,
up
right?
loose
And it's
ends and
all a lot of it.
addressing any issues that arise.
You go to
from
this
kind of
item, it
these
has
broad
crit,
optimal
attack
level
speed,
changes.
power, and a passive,
so I
right?
think
It's
the
just
thing
too.
that-
It's, some of
and
them are
so
just too
people are
good.
Clear kind of what we're
What are they
expecting,
nerfing?
so that if
Every
we
single
ship
item
this
is
and it's not meeting that expectation.
Jerome, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream.
In general,
They're building.
versus
They're
tank
nerfing
should
strength
feel pretty
items,
similar,
intelligence
right?
items,
Tanks
health
lost
on
a certain
items,
amount of saturation items that become
protections
tanky,
on items.
carries
Yes,
lost a
everything is
certain
getting
amount of
nerfed by
DPS.
like the
We
similar
expect
to
that to
same
be
percent on
relatively
all
equivalent.
items,
And as you
and then
move closer
also
to
making
now
it
the
cheaper
bruiser versus the carry scenario
on a lot of
I
items as
expect
well.
that the bruiser lives slightly longer, and we have some targeted changes to address
Every
that.
single item.
And as you go to carry versus carry, they should probably be the ones that
The
live
base
most
stats on
longest
every
out
single
of all
item
the
are getting
changes,
nerfed
but
by
we wanted to
10
make, we
to
think that there's
12%.
room for them to go up a little bit. So we expect carry versus carry, the really high burst damage dealers, will have a little bit more breathing room, especially from themselves, as well as bruisers with damage items jumping on them. But we don't want to make it so that tanks just feel like they're unkillable. And so that's an expectation of this change. Another one is that your power level as it relates to the map, you're essentially weaker compared to the map. Which
35
we've done a
strength,
lot
20
of things
attack
in
speed,
recent
20
patches to make
crit,
that
and the
actually so
passive.
that
Yeah.
you were more powerful to the map. The map had less ability to stop you. You could.
The whole
you could
thing I
fight
liked about
objects more
Smite 2 is when
regularly.
you
And we've
bought
actually
into
seen that
something,
hasn't really
you
one, it's created some
sacrificed
frustrations and
something
some
else.
bad metas on
If I
its
want to
own,
build some
and we feel
actives,
like
I
we've
should
gone too far in
sacrifice a
that direction. So
decent
this also
bit
serves as a correction
of
towards that.
survivability
So the
from
map is now going to be a bit
mitigation
more
slash
difficult. It's gonna be
protections,
harder
right?
to
I
receive
should
power
lose
dive.
that
You
because
have
I
to
have
put
an
more
active
effort into
item
doing
which
these
can
things.
basically
But
guarantee
again,
me
the
survival.
adjustment that we made here overall, you should. It's not going to be.
If
so
I wanna
drastic
go
that
like
you
a
log in and
power
suddenly you're
item,
unable to kill a fire giant, or you're
like
unable to kill a
Wish
tower.
Granting Pearl.
It's just a nudge in that direction.
It's a lot of base stats, but I get
Sorry,
nothing from it.
OB7, we said that pretty much every item is going to be
Yes.
seeing a little bit of reduction.
They're
but we
they
wanted to take
technically
some time
can't
and
kill
talk
an
about
item if they're
some of the
nerfing
items
every
that
single
aren't
item. That's
seeing
what I.
changes,
That's what
which
like I'm
is
going to keep.
effectively kind
reinforcing
of
to
like these
y'all.
items seeing a buff, correct?
Yes.
Juan?
You can't
Exactly.
kill
So
an
we
item
didn't
if
wanna
all
like,
items
we know that we
receive
also
the
still have some
same
goals
similar
for,
base
so for
stat
example,
nerf.
bruiser meta right now.
Every
tank
item
meta,
is getting nerfed,
where
and if
people
every
feel
item
like
is
especially at
nerfed,
the higher
technically
levels of
no
role play,
individual
they
item
just
got
get
nerfed.
completely run down by these characters that they can't be
Because
killed
you
and
can
have enough
only
damage.
compare
So
items
we did some
between
more
items
targeted, even
built
further nerfs
by
to those
players at
items
the
or
same
nerfs to those
time
items to address
in a
that
6-build
build,
system.
as well as
They're
there's a
all going
few
to have
items
6
that we
items,
kept
and you're all going to have
strong
6 items, and all of
intentionally
every
because we
single
felt
one
like
of their
either
individual
they're
items
being
was
really
nerfed by
underutilized and having
10%,
poor
and all of
performance,
yours were,
or we
regardless
felt
of
like
what
they
you
could just
built.
use a buff that was
Nobody
just
actually
helpful to
received a
help
nerf
the
on
game
the item they built.
So the
It's
items
just
not
all
being changed in the
lower
OB7
than it
are
was for
Titan's
everybody.
Bane and Obsidian Shard, your
Yep.
premier percent penetration items.
Yep.
Shifter Shield, which is a bruiser item, but seeing a little bit of low performance. Pawn, you want to go into a little bit of a detail on why we chose not to do anything with shifters?
Yeah, so because we're doing a lot of other bruiser item adjustments, so Runeforge Hammer's on the list, Gladiator Shield's on the list, Shield Phoenix on the list, right? We have a lot of these target adjustments. We wanted to make sure that bruisers still felt like they had options to choose from.
So why do it? They're explaining it right now.
And Shifter Shield was just not delivering in that department. It
The
just wasn't
base
doing
stats
enough.
on
And
items
we
were
actually did our
too
stat squish with all the stuff.
inflated.
We
You
actually
were
looked at the
getting too
efficiency
much
design
value
provides,
on a
it
bunch of
wasn't
different base
actually that
stats
crazy to begin
Yeah.
with.
on
So we
every
felt like
single
this was
individual
and we saw
item.
in the stats too that
So you
Baron
were
has, like,
able to
wasn't
get
really
everything you
performing that
needed
well.
from
People really weren't
items
utilizing it, so we felt like that could be fine.
in
And
a
Totem of Death is the
7
other
item
kind of
system, whereas
penetration
Smite only
item
had
for more of
6.
the
We've
ability
gone from
casters that
5,
can apply
you
a
go
bunch of
boots
ability
plus your 5
stats.
items,
We felt like
to
that in
6,
particular felt like it could
starter
use
item
a
plus
buff
your
because
5 items.
generally if you
Now
were
to
made, you
Smite
probably
in
just practice
7,
and
where
try to call it a
starter
day,
items
but
are
there's
its own
definitely some
separate
issues you could use
slot,
it
and
better,
then
so we
6
felt like that
more.
could use a buff.
We have more
All right,
items
well,
than we've ever
let's
had.
get
We have
into
7
some of the
items,
other
which is
items
5
that,
more than we had,
again,
5
got
years
the
ago.
10 to 12%
And the
change,
base
but
stats and
got
power of
even
all those
larger
items
changes
have
on top
continually
of that.
crept
So
up from
we'll
random
kick
buffs.
things off, and as Pawn
They need to
mentioned,
get it
we've
back
got
down to a
good
point to where you
list
can't
of,
just
of
get every
bruiser
stat
items
you
here.
need
So,
and be
Pawn,
able to
let's
build
go
hybrid,
through 'em,
because
and let's
that's
start
what
off with
benefits
Gladiator
hybrid
Shield.
builds,
so
is
Gladiator
being able to
Shield,
build
obviously
3
really effective
tank
item.
items and
It
then a
gives
bunch
you
of
a lot of
power items,
defenses.
and
It
there's
also
so
gives
much
you a lot of
base
base
stats
damage that you can
inflated on
apply
those
regularly
items
if
you
your
can
character
get
has a lot of
away
cooldowns.
with,
And we wanted
you know,
this one not
base
to
stats
just
plus
be- and this
3
is kind of
defense and
a
3
prelude to the,
power to
EV8
really
stuff that we're gonna
benefit
be
from
doing,
it.
where
Now this will
these are
make
gonna
it
be more
so if you really want
specialized.
power, you have to
Gladiator
go
Shield was
a lot more
providing too
power,
much
because
defense as
you're
well
not going to be
as
able
too
to
much
buy
just on-demand
half
damage
protections,
at the
half
early
power.
stages
So
of the
this will
game.
kind of
We've
solve
now shifted it so that
the
it's gonna be less
hybrid
defensive
meta
overall.
to an
You're gonna
extent
take
as
more
well.
damage for having bought this item. But if you have actually committed 4 or 5 other pure tank items, not bruiser items, pure tank items, you actually might hit harder with this than you did before.
Oh, wow, nice.
So a shift in that regard, but this should make it so that if you're rushing Gladiator Shield first or second, you're going to notice the trade-off here, and you're going to have to rethink how you're going to build Gladiator Shield.
All right, Glorious Pridwin up next. What's going on with
Keep in
Pridwin?
mind, this only
Pridwin
actually
was another
scales
item.
and does
A
more
lot of people
damage
just
if you
flashed into a build.
actually
It was really,
buy
really effective. We're taking
full
quite a bit of the
protections.
protections off of it overall,
Right?
as well as
So
we're taking
yes,
some of that
Glad
cooldown rate
Shield
off it, so
and
you're not getting
Pridwin
any
will
ability
do
spams
more
as
damage
you
and
are
will be
as
better, but
currently.
you can't
But,
be
we are
buying
in the same way
Glad
Shield.
Shield,
If you do play into
Blue
it, you do
Stone,
want to feel like a damaging item
and
if
you
you've
know, like
actually
some
built
damage
to
items, you'd
support
have
it.
to go
And
full
so we're
tank, which
making
means
the
you're not
shield
going to
more
do as
impactful
much
than
damage with
exposure
your
damage.
other
The goal
abilities.
here again is that specialization pass. It's not just nerf the thing. It is this item should feel like a trade-off. And so if you were building these two together right now, you're already down about 25 physical protection, you're down 10 magical protection, and you're down 8 CDR, right? So,
And they also nerfed
but
all the
you
protections
could
on items.
potentially
That's what you have to
higher
think. So when you
payoff
look
with
at Glad
one of
Shield,
these
you're like,
if
that's a
you built
huge
pure
buff.
tank
It's
item
like, well,
items.
yes,
Next
but
up
they're
on
also
the list is,
nerfing
Mystical
all of the
Veil.
protections on
Seeing some
items.
changes here as well.
Yep. So it's
Are
a
they
little
finally nerfing
cheaper,
tank meta?
But that's just to kind of balance out the stat
This
efficiency
will
stuff.
solve a
This
lot
is
of the meta
bigger nerf for the
concerns,
stat efficiency than
possibly
other
not right
items.
away, though. You
Losing
have to
that 100
wait.
health, losing that 10 physical
But it's a
protection.
step in
This
the
one
right
is meant
direction to get
be
us to
that
a
kind of
clean
early game
slate
you
to
build
start
it, and it
min
gives you some nice lane
maxing
pressure,
what
some
is
nice
wrong with
boxing,
specific items
potential.
and
So
making
we didn't
each
wanna,
individual item
adjust the
better.
passive too heavy because we think it's good in what it does.
They're
but
nerfing
these
all
stats it was
items
providing just
across
may
the
be too
board,
tanky
all of
out
them.
the gate when you come
Strength,
back to level.
intelligence,
Yeah, I think it's
defense,
another example of,
health,
like,
everything
item
is getting nerfed.
identity,
Right, yeah.
To
The
make items
identity
not as
of
good, 'cause
Mr.
we have
Veil,
7
how you're
items right
buying
now.
it, is to deal AoE damage in a tank.
So people are just
class.
getting way too much
And
stats
if
for
it
every
also
item they
is one
buy,
of the
which
best
caters to a
tank
hybrid
items,
meta,
like
because you can
stat-wise,
get what you
then
need
it's
from 3 or
just
4
the
of each
right
item.
thing to buy.
Yeah.
And that's not interesting,
Yeah.
right? It should be, I'm buying this because I'm making a decision that I value dealing AoE damage in a tick around me more than I value being tankier.
Yeah.
If I want to be tankier, I can build a more tanky item.
Yeah.
So this is just a sign of where we're trying to get to with these shifts.
Yep.
All right, and then Runeforge Hammer, an item that's been in the eye of a lot of people in the community.
One thing I will tell
seeing
people
some
is
additional
overall,
nerfs here as well.
Yeah, so this
most
one's getting a bit
people
more of
are
an
saying
adjustment
this is
just
the
because
worst
of
balance
stats
we've gone
provides, as
through
well
in the
as how
past
good it
couple
was
weeks,
before.
okay? Right?
So it's actually getting that cost increase along
The
with
tank
decrease
meta,
of
they just
strength,
really
the
hit.
decrease
This
of
is
health,
probably the
and-
worst
and
since
that
the
regen, which
mitigations
basically
meta.
is every wave, which comes every 30 seconds.
So
You're
when you
losing
see
2
a
health
big
per second,
drastic
about
change
60
like this,
health
this
off
is the
every
time to do
wave.
it. You have people
That's
really
how
don't
you-
like
how
the
you
meta
figure
we're
that
in right
nerf.
now.
It should be a lot more manageable now.
Let's take
This is
big
one that
steps
we
to solve it,
might,
and this is a
based off
big
just
step
feedback,
towards that.
do more nerfs to just like before we actually ship this.
Mm-hmm.
But we think that this is a good first step for the item. Again, we think that the passive is really strong. It serves the purpose it's supposed to. You build this on a character that has a lot of hard CC. You get a nice damage bonus for it. It scales already pretty well with protections, but it's hard to trigger.
Do I
your
really
own
actually
in your
know if
lane,
it'll
and
feel
early
better?
lane
No, I have
doesn't
no idea.
Scale that crazy.
Have to
So we
play
think
it.
it already feels like a pretty good spot where it's at. We just don't.
It
want
makes
to be
sense
providing so much
logically,
health and
though.
sustain in the lane.
All right, moving right along, Shield of the Phoenix up next, and Voidstone, which you may recognize or see that the counterpart to Voidstone isn't on this list. So
Yes.
let's start with Shield of the Phoenix first, and then we can talk about Voidstone.
Yeah, so Shield of the Phoenix, again, it's a very similar story. It provided too much health and physical protection on its own right, but we want to make sure that if you are building this, you can
Like,
actually
look at that.
play
Shield
into
of the
it more
Phoenix with
without
how strong
buying
of
a
an
whole bunch
item
of
that
high
is,
health
that
items,
all the way
right?
down to
If you
20
go
protections.
like a Amanita Charm, Yogis, and then you build this.
But
and you build a lot of
more
health health,
more
or just
healing
character
on it
has
now.
higher health in general.
Which
it
is
should
what it's
feel more
designed to
impactful
do.
for having gone that
Every
route.
item just had too many good base
but
stats. You could get too much
it's not gonna
protections,
provide
too
that
much
base
health,
level of
too much
toughness.
sustain.
And this
Every
one again
item.
is one that we're looking at it, right? 2 to 3%. This might end up being slight buff in some scenarios, but we think that's okay if you've built to support it.
Yeah, because again, it's an intentional decision that you are making.
Yeah. And then Voidstone going to be seeing a pretty significant decrease in the health that it provides.
150
Yeah, so
nerf.
when comparing there, because you have Void Shield and Void
W
Stone,
patch?
and they're very much mirror images of each other and what they do. And Void Shield,
definitely not
or
an
Void
L.
Stone was providing more than it really should have for its like kind of stat.
I think it's
power
a
budget
W
that we
patch,
assigned to
but
it.
like
and when we went and looked at the stats, it was
it's
overperforming
like
the void
a
shield.
non-patch.
This may be too big of a nerf for it, but
It's
kind of
just like there's a bunch of stuff on the table, and we're just like sliding that all off the table, and we're gonna kind of start
so we just
fresh,
again,
and starting
a lot of this
fresh
patch
is
is
for
a
sure
lot of,
gonna
like,
be a W.
Kind of correcting the power budget of things, making sure we have a solid foundation. And so that's why we chose to do that first rather than trying to potentially bring Void Shield up in a patch where we're talking about bruiser items, and that's a premier bruiser item to getting damage potential on you. So like we want to be careful with that.
Cool. And I wanted to call out Void Shield still getting a reduction, just not as significant.
Yes, not
as
significant.
Void Stone.
Yes.
Yeah.
People are getting permabanned in chat.
Oh,
Chat's
no.
going nutty right now. Anyway.
All right, let's talk about a couple of carry items.
A good transition here, right? So we've talked a lot about tank stuff at first, right?
Of course, people are losing their mind in this Smite game chat.
Again, going back to our goals, we aren't talking about every item here because we touched almost every item in the game.
Yes.
We'll have full patch notes a little bit later on this week for everyone to go through. Yeah.
But tankiness has gone down, damage has also gone down.
Yes.
Again, we expect carry versus carry time to kill to be a little bit longer.
Yep, it'll take a little bit longer to kill each other just because
People are
you
getting-
aren't building any
people are
defensive
getting
items,
banned
so
in the
any
Smite game
reduction of
chat?
defensive items doesn't apply to you, and so any reduction of power
Is the
doesn't
intention here
apply
to
you,
create a
so
burst
that'll
meta
be a
again?
little bit slower, but we think that that's actually healthy for the game right now.
Because right
This
now
has nothing to do with a burst meta. They are
Very
nerfing
burst.
power
Yes,
too.
very, very bursty.
And carry versus tank time to kill should be about the same with these
Yes.
changes. And tanks killing carries should take, I would assume, longer unless they have sacrificed their tankiness to
Yeah.
build more damage.
Yeah, if they're building pure tank, like a pure tank that hasn't built like the Pridwin and the Gladiator Shield, that should be about the same-ish. But that wasn't necessarily the problem people were facing. It was they're going to run you down with a Mystical Mail, they're going to run you down with a Pridwin, they're going to run you down with a Gladiator Shield. And now if a person's running you down with that build, you should have more chance of actually fighting back at them as a carry, as a mage. So that's why these target adjustments are in addition to what we're doing, is because we felt like if we didn't do anything there, that actually might go up and that might favor the bruiser. We felt like we really had a lot of extra stuff we need to do here.
Yeah. And then the last couple items on the list for
Just
just
take
a
it out
little
of the
bit
game?
more than the 10 to 12% were Chin's Blade and Sunbeam Bow.
Yeah,
You don't need
if
to take
they
it out
were
of
to
the
be
game?
adjusted per the stat squish, it would look something like decrease strength from 30 to 25, or decrease attack
You don't need to
speed
take it out of the
from
game.
20 to 15, or just a small.
You just
cost
need to build
increase.
things that
We
support
felt
it
like these
now.
items
You
in
can't
particular,
just
They
build
were just they're meant to kind of
braggies
scale with the game.
and something.
But
If
they're
you
also
want
your
true
highest
value from it, you
DPS
have to build
options
attack
at the
speed to
start
get
of
the
game,
benefit,
like as your
which is
first
the whole
buys.
point of
which just we
each
wanted to
item.
make
You
sure that
shouldn't be able
they
to
need
grab
more
an
support from
item
other items
that
to
is just
feel like
OP.
they're
You
as
need
strong
to,
as they can,
if you want to
because
buy
they're
that
meant to
item,
be
you
those
need
type
to
items. They're meant to be
optimize
the
a
thing
build
that
around that
rounds out
item.
your on-hit build rather than being the
So
primary
you
thing
shouldn't
on
just
its own
get
doing the-
20% base attack
All right,
speed
well,
on
I
that
think
broken
is
ass item.
everything that I had on the list for items. Again, we're not going to go through every single item one by one because it's a lot. We will have patch notes live.
I think
on
they're trying to get to
22.com a little bit later on this week.
60.69 hours
Or
and then
if you're
leave.
interested, I believe we're flash testing again this afternoon. So
Yes, we should
if you want to
flash
hop
test
in and
again
try
this
out the changes,
afternoon.
you can.
Yeah.
Probably be a smaller. Usually the second day of flash testing, just fewer people show up.
Yep.
But we do keep. Recently, we started keeping the servers up for longer.
I don't
through
actually know,
overnight,
I'm just
but
guessing.
Turning off the conquest queue, so if you want to make a customer, if you want to hop into practice and just mess around with stuff, you can
Yeah.
do that. I think as you're playing it, think about kind of the.
Keep
way
in mind,
that
chat,
we
you
have
could get to
described
420
what our
69
goals are,
before you
and
leave.
assess it versus like, are we achieving our goals, and where are we not achieving those goals? Do you agree with those goals?
Yes.
And if you agree with those goals, then let's talk about where we're failing to get there, and not.
It's just that's the
specifically,
perfect
like,
example, Jelly.
you know,
It's just
it's
too
really
bloated.
Easy to obsess over. They nerfed
That's
everything
just
in the
way
game
too
or
bloated.
whatever, right? It's like this is the first step towards getting us to where we want to be, and we feel like it's a step in the right direction. So please just try it. Think about where we think we're trying to go, and let us know how it's feeling.
Yeah, and just an anecdote, right? MOBAs are notoriously complicated. Just over my time working on Smite, I've seen things like we did a balance change that for the life of us we could not figure out how it related to Kali, but she went up by 5% win rate, just inexplicably, and we still don't really fully understand why that happened. We thought it was a bug with the character, but like all the change we did not have anything to do with on-hit assassins.
Right.
Other on-hit assassins didn't go up, but Kali did. We've also seen things where an item exists in the game, no one utilizes it. We make a small change to some item over here. People will rethink their builds and go, oh, actually the best way to play the game is to run 10 of these items on every single character. And that item didn't get really changed at all. So MOBAs are just notoriously complicated. That's why
he's saying exactly what I said last week when we were debating about when somebody said item buffs and nerfs directly affect the metas of the game, and I'm like, it really doesn't. Sometimes items aren't touched at all, and somebody's like, oh, actually, I actually think this will be broken if we do this, and then they try it, and then they're like, oh, fuck, yeah, this is busted.
So we just want to be really
players define metas, not the actual
and
stats or anything of the items. Don't get me wrong, balancing items will affect the meta.
Obviously,
but it's players that define it.
Balance changes in the history of Smite 1.
Yes.
That certain players may draw corollaries
9.5.
9.5, right? Our intent is not to do that.
Yes.
Right? And that's not what
anybody who thinks this is a 9.5 doesn't understand
so for example, right,
Smite.
One way, so let's say
9.5 increased the base protections and base health of every single character in the game. Every single character in the game got tankier.
And that would largely
every single one. This has nothing to do with that.
More, and that's how those types of adjustments can cascade.
Increasing the base health and base in the base health was like an increase of 40% or something wild like that. This has nothing to do with 9.5. It's not even close to the same. They're nerfing all items, which just affects in-game build power and scaling and protections.
Very specifically targeted.
Has nothing to do with 9.5. This is not making everybody tankier, and this is not making everybody do more damage.
Decrease their feeling is the damage.
It's decreasing the built stats you can get in the game across the board.
That's why we're trying this approach.
Protections, health.
That's why sometimes when you see
strength. Daylick, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream.
You can very quickly swing the game one way or the other really heavily because those are very global adjustments that affect
exactly Lotion. Eye of the Storm people think is really good. Some people don't use it at all. They'll all of a sudden buff its strength by fucking 5, which really doesn't affect your game at all. And people are like, oh, it got buffed, I'll try it. And then they realize it's good, even though they haven't changed anything, actually making it better.
Relic, gentlemen. I have on the screen here. I'll bring it up. But let's kind of talk about our next steps for Blink. What we're planning after all the testing that we've been doing.
Yeah, so the current next step for Blink is we're going to decrease the cooldown from 210 to 180.
They took my idea.
It's too long. Yeah. And we also want to give it some extra bonus incentive for you to be aggressive with it that further reduces the cooldown. So the goal here is if you get a kill or you attack
180 seconds down by 30.
Blinking, you'll get another 30 seconds off of this. Yeah. We saw that overall, just some data points, we saw that the game went from at the casual levels, the game was something like 6 blinks were the average expected outcome in your game to that went down to being about 2 with purification beads taking like 3 or 4. Yeah. But as you went very, very high and ranked, this is like the 4000 MR plus or SR plus, it became very quickly 6 beads and blink was maybe one of a choice. And its win rate fell where it was actually doing pretty well at casual level. So that just kind of shows the disparity between like the overall most players' experiences versus the very top end where they can actually they can leverage the advantages a lot more. And so because of that, we felt like Blink definitely had some room to be improved on. But we think that overall
this is regular Blink
felt healthier. People still are using
weird condition basic attack or kill. Yeah, I don't really understand that.
But people aren't just immediately fleeing fights with it for free. Right. There's more counterplay to it. So we're probably going to sit here for a while. That doesn't mean we won't ever revisit it again, but we think that we're actually at a point where
180
for potentially
and then with a kill or just a basic attack
a much longer period of time, because this will be a good spot for it to be.
So
why
questions from chat real quick? Just to confirm, this is not combat Blink. This is Blink with the same rules of out of combat Blink.
Yes.
If you kill multiple people,
it's just one.
Is it reduced by 30 seconds one time? And then there's people are questioning the wording of basic attack or kill.
Yes.
Is that intended? Are we supposed to or use an ability, or is it
so actually, I think the way I've implemented it, which we should just go update the wording, is on damage. On damage or kill. Cool. Okay. And the kill clause is really there for the cases where the tower sniped it from you, right? Yeah. Technically, to get a kill, you're gonna have to hit with an ability, so that felt like a weird clause, but it's there because towers can get the kill.
Yeah. And does this is my ignorance. Like
So if you've done any damage to a god,
Yes.
Okay.
within 4 seconds, or kill a god.
All right.
then.
Well, let's get into god balance. Shall
So
we?
if you've done
Yeah,
damage to a
there's some
god
exciting stuff here.
We've
within
got,
4 seconds,
Merlin
it's on a
kind of
150
performing
cooldown,
on the
so
lower
2
end
minutes
since its release. So he's
in
gonna be
change.
seeing,
That's pretty
a
good.
round of buffs here to
That's
a
pretty
few
good.
abilities. His Arcane 1 and Arcane 2.
I think that'll
Gonna
give
be
some
seeing
viability to the
increase in
jungle,
damage.
having it on a
His Radiate,
potentially,
which is a fire one,
you
also
know,
gonna be seeing a damage increase. And then Blizzard,
still
we're going to
3
be
minutes.
increasing the deployment range of the
two
ability.
and a
Yeah,
half minutes.
so
2.5 minutes. That's
everything
not bad,
that's
actually.
the damage adjustments, he was just underperforming.
I
We
want
saw
it,
that,
if
especially
it were
as
me
the
choosing,
game
I want
went
it down
on,
to
he was
150
flying low and
seconds
lower,
with
people
30
were
off,
learning
to where I
play
could have it
against
down to 2
Merlin,
minutes.
And the people who were learning to play as Merlin, getting familiar with that muscle memory again, they weren't really catching up, so we just felt like he needed a buff. But the
Merlin
Blizzard
buff,
change is actually
W.
just a Smite 1 parity miss.
Oh,
You couldn't
okay,
deploy it as
Just
far
leave it
as
alone.
intended.
Combat
so that
blink,
should just
I
make
know.
his combos feel more natural.
I know.
And this is in addition to some
Merlin
other
did need
changes we
it. I
made
feel
over
really
hot
bad.
fixes that made so that some ability feedback, some post-fire timings got adjusted as well. So he should feel in a
I
pretty good
feel
spot
really
about
bad
this.
for Merlin's
All right,
launch.
The next one, I believe, is a big paragraph here, Pawn. So
Ooh.
Aladdin,
Oh, geez. Oh, God.
going to be seeing a large shift here. And you're the
Yes.
perfect person to
Yes.
talk to us about Aladdin and what we've got going on.
Little bit of history. Aladdin, very strong, had to be nerfed a lot of times, to the point where he's like one of the lowest performing characters in the entire game. He gets a little bit better at high rank, but he's still underperforming. But he's also a contentious ban because he warps team fights so heavily that you kind of have to respect it, especially at the high level where like that can just really immediately swing a fight. And so our goal here is to help him overall, give him some more capacity to be a threat when he comes to like poking targets and just doing some chip damage in, but make it so that the top end damage potential when he utilizes all of his genie forms is a bit lower, and then change his ultimate such that it has more upfront actual oomph behind it for the Aladdin player, but make it so that when the fight does happen, it's a much more fair fight between the players. So very quickly, Kufik Invocation, you could read most of these changes as the base version of the ability got better, but the genie version of it got a little bit worse. Either had scaling reduced or had base damage reduced, and that's across the board for all the abilities.
Okay.
And then into the lamp, it now actually does damage when it hits the target. It just can't do damage below the health that you would restore your target to, because when you ult someone who's at like 10%
then they
health,
heal,
they'll heal up to 50%. So if you hit someone who's full health, you will actually have some damage done to them already.
Oh, nice.
But Aladdin no longer gets that advantage that he was before, where he would always heal to 60, but his ally, the enemy that would come in, was 60 down to 40. That's actually now been equalized to 50 overall.
Okay, nice.
And as well as the enemy has more CDR that they get when they enter the stage. So the fight should feel more fair. So the goal here is that this should have brought that top end fight warping down a little bit, given players more oomph for actually hitting their ultimate successfully, and then adjusted the damage such that the combo pieces that he does when he just wombo combos someone isn't necessarily stronger, but when he's looking to poke damage on someone, that is stronger. Cool. And this is a very large shift because he is a very unique character in what he does. But we think this should put him in a healthier spot overall. It should feel better to play as Aladdin, but it should also feel better to play against Aladdin.
Just to confirm I'm reading this right, I can't just like kill somebody with a lamp, right? Okay.
If you
I
hit
can't just throw a lamp at you, bounces off your forehead, you fall over.
If you hit someone at 1% health, you'll deal 0 damage. I think you'll actually see the damage number pop up. It just won't actually deal that damage.
All right, next up, we've got another all-new Smite 2 goddess, Hecate, going to be seeing some buffs here. Triplicate form, we're going to be increasing the damage. Repel magic, we're going to be increasing the magical shield. And then open the gates, the ultimate, we're going to be increasing the damage on that ability as well.
Yep, Hecate, again, just kind of underperforming across the board. She felt like we could do some buffs here. It's notable that we also made sure to avoid buffing or changing the 2, because while she is underperforming in like Conquest, in the arenas and the assaults and the joust, the aspect
I don't see
version of
Hecate
it's very, very
in.
strong.
Have you
And
like
so we
with
wanted
how
to make
often
sure
you
that
watch
what
me?
we're
Have you ever
providing
seen
was
Hecate in my
largely
ranked
buffs
games
to
anymore?
her outside of Conquest, and we didn't want to address the 2 too
You know what I
much.
mean? I haven't
That's
seen her at
something
all.
We'll probably look at going forward, but
Not once.
for this pass, we want to make sure that we weren't buffing that part of her kit.
Right, next
Literally
up
one
is
of
Bach.
the
It's gonna be
least
seeing
used.
some buffs here.
Mages in
Chug
general
and
are
belly flop.
probably in
Chug
need
gonna
of a
be
lot of
seeing
buffs.
Decreased cooldown and increased protection scaling, and then belly flop, we're going to be
Mages feel the worst right now, so when it's like, does this mage really need a buff? It's like, I don't know, but I just know mages feel like shit.
Knocked up.
Yeah, so Chug, obviously, just having lower cooldown means you heal more often. You can maintain your drunkenness. You can get access to the in-hand bonus damage more regularly. Belly flop higher base damage is more threatening. And that last note is actually a parity change that largely mirrors what happens in Smite.
Okay, nice.
Because in Smite 1, it's when they land, they get a 2-second slow. In Smite, it was when you get hit, you were getting the slow, which means that whole air time that you had was basically eating the slow.
Right.
So now when you land from the knockup, you'll have essentially 2 seconds remaining. And if you didn't get knocked up, you'll have 2 seconds.
That's pretty strong.
All right, next up on the list, Vulcan.
Big changes to Vulcan, right?
Some spicy changes here. So, Master Craftsman, we're going to be making some changes to a couple of the mods. The Efficiency mod set, this mod now provides 5 intelligence plus 1 per level, in addition to the CDR bonus. And then the Seismic mod is now going to cause Earthshaker to knock up enemies in addition to the Tremble effect. And then Backfire, just increasing the damage on the ability.
Yep. For the passive, it's the pieces that weren't really being utilized, weren't getting that much effectiveness. We just want to make sure that feels strong, so all the playstyles of Vulcan are supported. I know people like see Vulcan buffs and go like, why are we buffing him again? But we wanted to make sure that how you choose to play Vulcan, each of those feels pretty good. And then he did have a little room to come up that we've just seen over letting him rest for over his last bounce changes, where we just felt like he could get a little bit of extra damage on his Backfire.
Why does Kabrakan say small buff?
Yeah,
And all the other ones just say buff.
Because when I'm writing the notes, sometimes I write small, sometimes I don't.
No, that's good.
Aladdin got a large shift.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
that did match the definition of large shift.
Let's talk about Kabrakan, though. So Shadow Zone now provides Kabrakan an additional
let's support Vulcans.
1% damage.
If you
mitigation
go
for
the
every
knockup
100
mod,
protection
you're not
from
picking
items.
your Masterwork
And then
mod,
the
and
Refraction
Masterwork
Shield,
mod
we're
is the
gonna be,
best part of
the
tanky
enhanced
Vulcan,
Refraction
so you
Shield
can't go
now
a solo
also
Vulcan
restores
and go for the
1%
knockup, in
maximum
my
health in
opinion, because
addition to the base
Masterwork
amount.
literally
Yep,
is
this change is really
best
focused on making tank
tank
Kabrakan feel better.
mod
I think that
for
the
him.
like offensive, especially with the Pendulum Blade Kabrakan build, where like you get a lot of resets, we feel like that one's actually doing pretty well now that we've buffed a lot of the scaling on it. But the tank version of Kabrakan just doesn't feel as impactful. And so giving him extra mitigations from his aura zone when he builds protections, and making it so that when you do build those health items, you're getting more heal from it. That's gonna more affect that tank side of Kabrakan, which we feel like he needed help in.
All right, moving along to Rom. Rolling Assault going to be increasing the bonus damage, and then Astral Barrage, the ultimate, going to be increasing the damage.
Yep, another case of a character we feel like is just kind of underperforming. He's settled.
Use a little bit of love.
Yeah, he before his aspect version was actually doing pretty good, but since then we've kind of seen that fall off. So we just felt like
Did Herc get
Rom,
nerfed?
both aspect and unaspect, could use a buff here.
Not sure.
Cool.
He already kind of got heavily nerfed with his protections on his 3, so he probably doesn't need a nerf.
Eruption. We're going to be removing the dash when used.
Technically,
while
that's not a
enhanced
buff to
magma
anything
rush is
except for
active,
tank
but
Kabrakan,
instead,
not damage
Pele's Eruption will now
Kabrakan. Not even the
always
solo build
gain a
Kabrakan.
burst of movement speed during the pre.
That's technically trying to influence
and then
people
the
to
timing of
stop
the
playing
ability
him
has been adjusted
tanky
a little
because
bit
they
just to
nerfed.
make sure
One thing
that,
you have to understand, they just nerfed all the items.
Visually, it looks
Yeah,
correct.
visually, it looks
Which
different,
means
but
they
the
just
ability
nerfed all
is
the
the
items, so
Yeah,
you can't
so
build
we
hybrid
got a lot
anymore,
of
and that's
feedback
what
with the +1 for
Kabrakan was
Pele,
doing.
just
So when
didn't
you're like,
really
oh,
hit
he
the
needed a
mark.
nerf, technically he
A
got a
lot of
nerf
times
because
the
his
dash
built
that
items
you were
aren't as
getting
good.
was disruptive. You might not expect it to happen. You sometimes overshot the target, and you
2
had
to
kind
3%
of play strangely
mitigations
around it.
for every
And we
100
had some ideas for
protections
fixing
built.
that at
Show
the
me a time
but
where you're ever getting
when
more
Princess
than
Bari came
150 to
out,
200
we had this
protections
really
unless
easy
you're
effect with
building
this,
full
scaling movement
protections.
speed. And her 3 we actually think has felt really, really good to play, right?
Yeah.
Like it gives you
Which
that
means
movement
you would
burst
have
that
to
you
build
need that
full
feels very
protections, which means
controllable.
you're not
Or
going
like,
to be doing any
why
damage.
doesn't Pele do that instead? And while we're at it, why does she have to have her 3 enhanced?
Remove the
She might
little
just be able
dash
to
on
have this all
Pele.
the
That's a good
time.
change, I think.
So we feel like this is a more fitting +1 for her. It utilizes tech that we've already kind of proved out that feels really good. She has her own custom curve for it, so it's a little bit different than Bari's, but basically when you use the ability, you're going to be able to cover more distance all the time, and it's that kind of burst of speed that you get when you Bari 3.
Cool.
And then the other note is
So in
just
order to
she
get
would
those
jump up in the
protections,
air
if
and
you
slam
think that's a
down,
true buff on
and then
Kabrakan,
would be
it's basically
standing there
just
for a
saying
little
you
bit,
can't build
and then
hybrid
you'd see the
anymore
pulses
because all of
around,
the
and
items'
that's
base
gonna
stats were
feel
nerfed, and you
more
would have to
seamless.
opt into full tank
She's
Kabrakan.
going to be in the air a little bit longer, but when she lands,
No, I'm saying it's
gonna have
bad.
the visual come out. So that's just
Yeah.
more of a fix for the
I'm
feel of the
saying
ability.
if you build
The
full
actual
tank
timing hasn't
Kabrakan,
changed
this is
at all.
giving you an opportunity to
Well, we
have
will hop in game
viability
and show
because
this
full
off
tank
in just a
Kabrakan
little
is
bit.
not
We'll go over
viable
the
right
balance
now.
changes, but
Yeah.
there's
So you
something else
don't
here
want to
that's pretty
buff
cool that we wanted to show
mitigations
off
too
too,
much
but
because
let's get through the
mitigations are the
balance
most
changes
powerful
first, and
thing
we'll
in the
load up
game. They
game.
literally nerf true
So the
damage.
Morgan up
And he
next
already
gonna
has
be seeing a
per-
shift. So
mitigations built
Doomsayer, the
into his
dot
kit
damage
already.
on the passive ability
I don't
has
agree
changed from
that
basic
it's
attack damage
bad.
to ability damage.
Yeah.
And then deadly aspects, we're going to be increasing the damage. But then Dark Omen, we're going to be decreasing the minion damage, but increasing the initial damage scaling and the mark scaling.
Yeah, so we wanted to buff Morgan a while ago, but one aspect of her that was really, really impressive was just the
You
wave
can't
clear,
build a
especially
mitigation
with
build
the
because
passive
in order to
being
have a
dot that
mitigation
triggered
build that
immediately
matters, you
execute,
have to
it
have
made it
something
she
that
was, like, really,
offsets it,
really
and
good
that's
at
usually
pressuring on
damage.
stuff. But we saw that her more mage style, her more assassin style of play just didn't have the oomph behind
You're
it.
not
that it
even
did before.
getting
So this shift is very much targeted
the
towards
whole thing
weakening
about
the wave
mitigations
portion of it.
builds being
It
strong is because
ability,
your on hits were
damage means
making
that
up for
it
the
won't
damage.
trigger that minion execute anymore.
Okay.
So that's
yeah.
just gone.
Yeah, that's
That's a big change,
hidden
yeah.
And
nerf, I
Bluestone
guess.
and Heartseeker and Soul Reaver, those all scale with strength and intelligence now. So you don't just get it for free like you did in Smite 1. So a mitigations build is not going to be as effective in Smite 2 because you have to build the protections to actually get the mitigations. And if you're building the protections, you don't have strength and intelligence. And if you don't have strength and intelligence, things like on hits are not going to do enough damage for it to matter.
We fixed an issue where this was benefiting too much from intelligence when enhanced. And then Reverent Steps, the 3 we're going to be decreasing the base damage and the int scaling.
Yeah, we think her early lane is largely too strong because of
They
the
nerfed
base
the
damage that Reverend
fuck.
Steps
If you
provides
want to
for
see a
nuclear.
nerf,
So
chat, if
toning
you guys
that
want to
down
know what a
means that her
real
wave condition
nerf
makes it a little
is,
bit more manageable.
the
And
Bari
the
nerf
laking side of her, we think
nerfing
that
her
was
base damage of her
overpowered
3 from
because she was kinda getting too
30
much free stats
at
from
level
her
1
passive
down
as
to
well as
10
that hidden-
is a
we were looking at just
60-something
nerfing the
percent
scaling of
nerf.
the, Sacred Bell, but
That's
where
a
we found the bug.
nerf. You want
And
to
that
talk about
bug
like
is
a
pretty
nerf?
significant
That's a
intelligence
nerf.
scaling,
Warranted.
we think that the inside of it,
Warranted
that late game
because
with
it's the
ability
same
is
damage
part that
late
really
game,
need to
but
be adjusted.
early
The
game,
attack
you
speed's
now,
gonna temper
you know.
the more strength focused side of the build.
It's warranted nerfs though.
we-
But like
somebody
you want to
in
talk
chat's
about a
very
nerf,
excited. They said,
that
"Yeah,
is a
we
nerf.
Oh,
30
Relic
base
nerf. Up
damage
next, let's
per
talk
I did
3,
not
which
have
you can do
time to
2 of them.
alphabetize this. It's
down to
very
10.
much a
Yeah,
copy-paste
sorry.
list. So yeah,
That's
you get surprises
when you
with
get
these
the
next.
reset.
I know, right?
Instead of doing
So,
60
summon
damage
Suku
from
for
your
wheelers, we're gonna
3,
be decreasing the
you are
strength
now
scaling.
doing
Same thing with
20.
Moonlight Charge.
This is the revert of the revert of the revert. We did some early hotfix changes. We found some core bugs that we needed to resolve. We thought those bug fixes were going to be bigger impactful. So the main one that we were thinking was the most impactful was the fact that she got a passive all the time, no matter what.
Remove some scaling
And
too,
we
yeah.
thought that
Still
fixing that was gonna
warranted.
be a pretty big
Warranted.
hit to her. It didn't actually affect her as much as we thought. So
Thank God
the
they nerfed her 3.
preemptive
That's what I'm saying,
reverting
Lotus.
of the nerfs
It's
we
a
did
warranted.
as
It's a
stopgap,
warranted nerf.
We have now reverted back and
That's pretty. It's
Mordred up next.
That's a big nerf, though.
To aspect of
I still
Rage.
think it's
Going
warranted,
to be
but
decreasing the ability cooldown reduction while Blood Rage is active. And then Cruel Strikes, the one, we're going to be increasing the cooldown. And this is for base version of Mordred as well,
yes. Yeah, so we think the aspect of Rage just had some room to come down. It was definitely, you're getting
Mordred
a lot
nerf
of
warranted as
reduction
well.
from that.
Awilix
And
nerf
then
warranted.
separately, we just also think that he was getting access to
I think
Cruel
Kabrakan
Strikes.
needs more
Right,
nerfs
and I think last up we've
to
got
his
Odin.
ability
Yeah.
to deal
Gungnir's
damage.
Might now
I think his
pierces
cooldowns
gods,
are a
but will
little
only
bit too
stun the
low.
first god hit. It's a big change. And then Ring of
But
Spears,
they
the
did
ultimate.
nerf
Odin
hybrid.
gains a
They
stack of
nerfed
his
items
passive
in
upon
built
casting
items,
his
so
ultimate,
we'll
and now
see.
also provides 8 intelligence in addition to 5
Odin.
strength per stack when killing an enemy god
Significant
while
passive,
inside
that's
the
fine.
ring.
Yeah, so Odin
fine.
has been on our backlog for a long time to do something more with,
Mm-hmm.
but because that takes time and we were building out a whole bunch of other things, it's just been really
Stuns the
difficult to.
first,
But
hits
we thought
everybody though.
It wasn't worth sitting on the ideas that we have any longer, and we should just do something.
His damage is nuts, yeah.
That Gungnir's Might Piercing Gods actually came from.
I think
a
it's his
Reddit
cooldowns
suggestion.
more than
Nice.
his
We
actual
We looked at that one, that
like
actually just
base
feels like
damage and
he's gonna make
scaling.
this
His base
character feel
damage and
better.
scaling
At
are
the
in
same
line with
time,
everybody else's,
his
but his
passive
cooldown
has
is up
very
so
good
much. He's
interactions
just
with the game, he didn't have access
consistently
to
getting
it.
so much damage
Now when he
out.
ults, he'll get a guaranteed stack
Considering
damage,
he has
which is
4
great.
abilities
And then the other part is
within
he
his
is
first
a
3
hybrid character, but he
abilities.
wasn't getting the intelligence, and that just felt like a miss.
Yeah.
So we have fixed that. So this is going to help Odin quite a bit.
I don't think it's his scaling
smooths
or
out
his
some of the
base
rough
damage.
edges
I
he
think
had
his
that were
cooldowns are
really
just
arbitrary
too
and there
low
wasn't
at
really
base.
Any reason for them to exist. We may circle back still on Odin. This is not a we're done with Odin, we're not going to do anything. It's just we know that we have ideas we want to do. They take a lot of time and effort, and in the meantime, we'd rather do things to help them out in the short term than wait on them any longer.
Cool. All right, well, that is it for the god balance that I've got going on. I'm going to bring us back to cams while I load in game, and you all can maybe start a little bit of Q&A while I get the game loaded up, and we can show off that Pele change.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen this question asked a few times. How do you think these changes should impact game length?
My expectation is games will go longer off these changes. Generally, you need kind of a certain amount of power to be able to even end the game in the first place. Even if the entire enemy team is down and you have a minion wave of the Phoenix, it takes a certain amount of time to kill the Phoenix, it takes a certain amount of time to kill the Titan. You just need that baseline power. And because you're delaying that a little bit because now you don't get as many stats, the game length should increase. I have been surprised in the past, right? Like one aspect is tanks are going to be less effective at potentially walling you from sieging a base. That could be a consequence of this. It also could be that tanks have a harder time actually being the front line that takes the Phoenix shots for the team, which might mean that defenders have more of an advantage. My guess though is game length goes higher, but we have quite a bit of room for game length to go longer before we're super worried. So we don't expect it to be enough that we'd want to temper these changes.
How do we feel about mages?
Mages are definitely in a tricky spot because I think they're more sensitive to the penetration shifts that we do than carries and assassins are. Just because carries and assassins have more consistent pressure because they just by nature they can auto attack. So if their abilities are down, they could still contribute. They probably have some room to come up, and that's why we made sure that Totem of Death remained strong, and we also didn't temper Obsidian Shard, was to
Tank
make sure
life
that they still
is
felt like
tough
they could deal damage.
life.
It may be that we need to
Tanks are the strongest things in the game right now, buddy.
and that's actually something we were looking at when we were talking about the OB8 stuff internally. Is it does feel like there's a gap.
This is literally the biggest tank meta we've had in a few years.
It's really hard to actually create a high intelligence build. You basically have Book of Thoth and that's it. Otherwise, you have to pick utility items that give you things.
Hercules is still performing well, especially in my ranked games, even after the nerfs he's taken. So I don't think he needs another. I don't think he needs another nerf.
So the tank meta complaints that we feel most strongly about are actually
the 3 nerf was huge.
The tanks building the Runeforged Hammer, the Mystical Mail.
Why are we in the biggest
it's
tank meta right now? Every single high-end game has 3 tanks. Jungles are building tanky.
The time that you take to kill them generally feels okay. But when they can run at you and you have to feel
it's a tank meta right now. I don't know how to describe why. It just is how the meta is. The meta and win rates are shifted towards tanks right now. Tanks are the highest performing class in the game right now.
Now, if that tank player has built the Pridwen, they have built the Gladiator Shield, they're losing more protection.
This is an indirect buff to objectives, yes.
Specifically, they should feel like they can be pressured out more easily by the carries.
I just feel like people get upset about that meta pretty quickly. It's because it's the most unfun meta to play into.
All right, well, I've got
it is. You get the biggest overreactions. You're 100% right, but it's because it's the least fun meta to play into.
I will fire
from
the eruption. And you see she's got that little bit of a speed boost.
Nice, yeah.
And if you just kind of like WASD as you're doing it, you'll see that she can basically stay in place. She doesn't have to go anywhere. If you do cooldown, you probably just have.
Oh,
so
yeah,
wait.
1 second. All right, well,
she still gets the little.
So you said just like WASD around.
Yeah. So you can change direction midway through too. So like
okay. So they changed it from a little hop. They changed it from a little hop that makes you have to go there to just give you a burst of movement speed that you can adjust mid thing, so you don't like go over where you're trying to go. That's a lot better. That's a lot better then. It doesn't matter if you're using your 3. You don't. It doesn't matter if you're using your 3 and you can change direction mid 2 now. So it's basically the same distance traveled, but now it's not a leap, and you can change direction mid air. So it's basically just a burst of movement speed instead of that little hop. That's a lot better.
So her ability to juke backwards.
That's a lot better.
That's why I talk about.
Yeah, it's the least fun meta. It always has been. Playa.
I absolutely was backpedaling.
It's because it leaves. If you're wondering like why do people overreact to the tank meta more than other things, is because there's the least amount of counterplay. It makes a very high time to kill, which caters to character kits that are really frustrating to play into. It leaves a lot of lack of counterplay when you get dove by one or even 2 of these tankier type jungles and solos. There's nothing you can do as a backline.
We think this is just cool
and the ability to escape because what happens is if you increase the time to kill on all fights, which is what those tank metas do, when you increase the time to kill, you're also increasing the opportunity for escapes, you're increasing the opportunity for abilities to get up for you to escape, and it just leaves a really unforgiving style of play with the tanks that can kind of just run around and do whatever they want wherever they want while still soloing backline, while still being able to grab objectives.
Somebody streamed last night and I noticed, and I was like, wait, is this coming in the next?
You don't want tanks to be bad though. That's why it's a consistent hard balance. You don't want tanks to be bad, because then you're just getting the fucking annoying like mages in your fucking dual lane and solo lane, right? It's just nuanced solo every game and shit. You don't want that either. But we're in a very strong tank meta right now.
And I just killed the Cyclops camp.
We want there to be equal and fair counterplay to every engagement as possible, and it'll never be perfect.
So.
Oh yes, I saw this.
Basically, wanted some way for why
you can drop things
really
now.
Just drop
so if you had like a chalice in solo lane, but you also had
pick what you want, you drop it on the ground.
Cyclopean Ward, but the dagger dropped, and there's somebody that's going to come pick it up, but I can't pick it up because I already have this, so I need to set it down, then try and pick it up. You can now pick up the Abyssal Dagger, and it will just swap out what you had in your inventory.
What happens is I pick up the
if that makes sense. So it's like, oh, I had a Sentry Ward, but I hadn't put it down yet, and we just killed the Fire Giant or stole it, and I need to pick this up before their guy picks it up, but I have it in my inventory, so I need to put my ward down and then pick it up, and now I lost it, right? Now, if I need to pick that up, I'm just going to pick it up, and it's going to drop whatever I had in my inventory. Really good quality of life there. And then my teammates can still come pick it up or whatever, right? If they're like, oh, I'll grab the Cyclopean Ward or whatever it is. I'll grab the whatever. Yo, Volts, thank you for the follow.
Different stuff. If it has a model,
good quality of life change there.
It will do that little gold plaque with the item. But we just think this is a nice quality of life improvement.
That is a good quality of life change.
It doesn't solve every
Pele,
problem,
another good quality of life change. I didn't like
it just felt good.
Couple questions. Does it automatically swaps with your slot 2?
So it will try slot 2 first. Then it will try slot 1.
No, enemies should not be able to pick it up. No.
And things that are not droppable are chalices, 3K potions, and the obsidian dagger.
Okay.
Because
it looks like the time frame was a minute.
More like, tank, spend your 3K gold on another power potion for me and drop it, right? Or obsidian dagger is really meant to be someone picks it up and holds onto it, and if you die, you drop it, right? Like, so some of these we have limited. But
what's the duration on it? Because that's a good question. Because then you could just keep buying like health potions and shit, and just leaving a bunch of them on the ground.
Enemies cannot pick it up. Just your own team.
And if you don't have something else,
are the patch notes out yet? They were. I don't know if somebody still has them or not. But yeah, somebody posted them in here. It was early look.
You have to be able to swap it. This is the. We know that there's some things about this that like it would actually be just cool to just be able to drop something for your team, or it'd be cool like when this times out and runs out. It's gonna
I just don't want people to like, as an example, just buy extra Sentry Wards and then just keep dropping them and storing them in the Fire Giant pit, right? If they last a few minutes, to just be able to just keep. All right, they got rid of ours. Pick up yours and put it down and get rid of it. I don't want that to happen, so I hope there's like a low limited like 60 seconds on it.
And I think right now you'll see that the potion actually has an icon on the map. It's gonna be the Pyromancer icon. I fixed that, so that should actually be like a.
Who's releasing after Serb? It's either Apollo or Guan or there's one more. They gave a list. I don't remember
Mulan
who's.
Banner, no Vulcan. Yes, Baron's Brew. Yes, Pyromancer.
Kali is next.
Yes, got it. Crystalline Egg. Yes. So it's Mulan's Banner is not droppable. Vulcan mods are not droppable.
I need food.
And
but I kind of want to see this. But I need to get food.
Power potion, chalice. I think those are the exceptions.
2 minutes.
It will still respect your inventory caps. So, for example, like if you have,
we'll see if there's any tech around that.
You go and.
We'll see if there's any tech around that affects it.
If it can't add a stack to your health potion thing, it just won't let you do it. So yeah, just a lot of nice flexibility. It's really easy to use, and you can ping to your team to come pick up stuff if you're like, I'm done with this, I don't need it anymore.
I'm edible if you're hungry. I appreciate that.
It's just a nice improvement.
I'll probably just get a sandwich.
Quality of life, you know?
A problem for a while.
And it's really cool.
I
know we got a lot of feedback just about when we added the Cyclops and the Scorpion camps.
Can DJ Zeus drop the beat?
Soon, you know.
This does apply to every mode, right? So
yes, it should apply to every mode where these droppables exist. For Arena, it doesn't apply. For Assault, it would apply because you can get I believe you can get the crystalline eggs. I haven't played the new dev test version that much. I don't remember what's all in that
I know that you can get the bombs.
Yeah, the runic bomb and the crystalline eggs.
It should
and I believe the obsidian dagger, but that's not droppable. So.
Yeah.
But still, you know, as you're picking up things that take up your consumable slot that you may want to hold on to, you've now got the ability to drop things that are droppable.
Yeah, it's just cool. Yeah, actually, prototyping this out was really fun because I had to open Blender and figure out how to UV match the pictures on the things. Just a little fun side project.
It's cool.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that was everything on my list. We got about 11 minutes for some Q&A. I know these past couple shows have been